The Canon G7X or the Sony RX100 Mark IV for shooting video, which one would I recommend? Hi, I'm Grant and I've done separate videos on both these little cameras on my YouTube channel, but I've had quite a few people asking me which one of these I would recommend. But before I get into this, let me just say that both these cameras are amazing cameras and they can shoot fantastic video in a small, compact package. As always, when you watch this review or any other review on the web, bear in mind that the reviewer, me, will have biases on what this camera or what I have used this camera for. In this case, I'm specifically referring to using these cameras for vlog or personal style shooting. Now that's the caveats taken care of. Let's get into it. Firstly, here's a quick comparison of the video specs of both. Both have near identical size or form factor, however the Canon is slightly bigger, so I give that win to Sony. Both have 1-inch 20 megapixel sensors. The zoom lens on the Canon has a slightly longer reach of 24 to 100 millimeters compared to Sony's 24 to 70, so that's a win for the Canon. Both the Canon and the Sony have 3-inch flip-up LCD monitors for selfie style shooting, although the G7X or the Canon has a touchscreen LCD monitor and the Sony doesn't, so another win to the Canon. Both record to SD cards, but if you wish to take advantage of the Sony's XAVC recording codec or format, or its high frame rate recording, you'll need an SDXC card, so I'll give the win to the Canon there. Next up, big win to the Sony for its ability to shoot 4K internal video, albeit for only 5 minutes at a time. It also has, which I believe is its main party trick, it can shoot slow-mo, 60 frames, 120, 240, 480 and 960 frames a second, although the last two aren't that flash. In my opinion, its best frame rate or slow-mo frame rate is 120 frames a second. The Sony can also shoot in both PAL and NTSC formats, and the Canon can only do NTSC. So once again, that is a win for the Sony. Both have good autofocus, but I'm going to give the win to the Canon with its ability to use the touch screen to set focus. My next part of the review is basically the usability for real-world shooting. For vlog style shooting or selfie style shooting, I prefer the Canon for some reason. It just seems to fit into your hand a little bit better, and it also has the record button around the back here in a it's slightly more accessible than the Sony, which I seem to struggle to find all the time when shooting like this. So that's a win to the Canon. As previously mentioned, the Canon has the touchscreen LCD monitor, and I use it a lot for adjusting focus and using it to scroll through the menus. Another win to the Canon. Speaking of menus, the Sony has a lot more ability to customize your menu settings and your picture styles, so I give the win there to the Sony. Battery life isn't great on either of these cameras, but I found the Canon to be slightly better, so a win to the Canon. Image stabilization. Both cameras have a couple of options for the image stabilization, and as I believe these cameras will be predominantly used for handheld shooting, it is quite important. For example, when walking and shooting with the Sony, I found that you had to have its image stabilization on the maximum setting to get a smooth shot, whereas the Canon seemed to work better straight out of the box. And I also found with the Sony that when you set your image stabilization to the maximum setting, it actually is cropping a little bit more in on the sensor, so your 24 wide millimeter lens isn't 24 wide millimeter anymore, it's more like a 28. As opposed to the Canon, when shooting that, it seems to stay on its wide 24 millimeter lens setting. So image stabilization, a win to the Canon. Picture quality. This one's a bit more subjective, and those of you that have been around for a while now will know what I say when I talk about the Sony look versus the Canon look. For example, this is the Sony, and I tend to think that's a little bit more video looking than perhaps the Canon, which I think have their color profiles dialed in a bit better and a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. So I will give that win to the Canon. However, for dialing in your settings, Sony has a lot more menus that you can get into to alter your picture look, including Sony's S-Log2 color profile or codec you can record to, so that is a win to the Sony. So if you're after 4K or super slow-mo, then it actually is no contest. Sony is your winner there. Audio. Don't overlook the audio capabilities of the cameras when purchasing. I would argue that the audio capabilities of the camera is often more important than the picture qualities, especially for vlogging, where if your viewer can't hear what you're saying, then it's all for naught. I've talked about this before and I'm not sure whether all the G7Xs had this problem, but that is the autofocus noise that the camera picks up on its internal mic. For example, if there's background noise, you may get away with it because the camera's auto gain has come up a little bit, but it is really annoying. So I have to give that win to the Sony, but unfortunately the Sony isn't perfect either, as I've noticed a bit of hiss or perhaps a high noise floor when recording, sometimes in quiet environments with the Sony. Often a way around your audio issues is attaching external mics to cameras, and neither of these cameras have an external mic in jack, so that is a win to neither. Also, both cameras are very susceptible to wind noise, where the wind hits its little microphones and destroys your audio. So I've attached felt or the very good micro muff filters over top of the microphone inputs on these cameras, and I'll attach the link to the micro muff site below. Last but not least, the price. At the time of recording this video, the price of the Canon G7X was $599 US on Amazon or the B&H website. The Sony RX100 Mark IV was $948 US on those same websites. The Sony is over 50% more expensive than the G7X. So that's a win for the Canon. Righto, it is time for my overall conclusion on which one of these cameras I think is better. Drum roll please. Unless recording slow motion video or 4K video is a necessity to you, then I would give my overall recommendation to the Canon G7X for vlogging or personal style video shooting. However, if you are really into tweaking or developing your own unique picture style, then I would go with the Sony. At the end of the day, you really can't go wrong with either of these fantastic little cameras. I'm also producing video courses on how to set up these cameras and to get the most out of them when shooting video, and I'll include a link below to my website where you can find out more. And that's my opinion on these fantastic little cameras. Thanks for your time.